Welcome to the After Dark podcast, the podcast in which Anthony leads his unknowing friend Konrad by the hand through TV shows. Will Konrad like them? Will Konrad hate them? Will Konrad predict what's going to happen, or will he be lost in the dark? Find out now, only on the After Dark podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony, and that's Konrad.
Hello!
Do you hear that, Konrad? It's a new theme to the After Dark podcast. We went into the 80s with our theme for the OA. It's funny that we did it for the OA because in Dark we had a lot of 80s themes, whereas in the OA we don't seem to have that, but we've got it anyway.
Listen, it's like a new pair of shoes. We're trying it on, like just to break it in. But I like it. I'm a big fan of synthwave, so. Oh, actually, it might be vaporwave. I can never remember what the actual difference between those sub-genres is, but it's one of those.
I think someone said vaporwave in the comments, but I'm not 100% sure. But also, like in our current background, it looks like I'm driving a little thing in Tron. That's what I was going for.
Okay, nice.
We're in Tron. Is what the thing is. You know?
Oh no, Alan 1's gonna kill us. Is Alan 1? It's been a long time since I've seen Tron.
I've never seen the original. I've only seen,
for God's sake.
I've only seen the new one with the weird Jeff Bridges face.
Yeah, like it's the original. Well, I mean, his face is kind of weird in the original as well, to be honest, because it's all like, I think it's rotoscoped or something. Like, so they kind of animate over the recording. Again, it's been a while since I've seen Tron. It's a good movie though. Light cycles, they were cool. Yeah,
they are cool. They're very, very cool. Have I asked you how you are this week, Konrad?
Possibly, but I'll reiterate it if you have. I'm doing very well. I enjoyed the OA this week. Not to put the cart before the horse. And we're watching lots of. In fact, I'm not going to say what I'm watching, but we're watching lots of themed movies for our other podcast coming up next week. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yes, keeping the cards very close to the chest there, Konrad. Lovely to see.
If you want to know what I'm talking about, if you want to be in on the joke, you go subscribe to that other podcast, all right? It's your fault, listener, for not having done it yet.
And actually, we don't plug that other podcast enough, considering that we have a lot of audio listeners who don't actually see on the YouTube channel that we have another podcast. It's called the Best Movie Podcast Ever. Go over to Spotify or any other podcasting apps and subscribe to it. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how my gambit of being antagonistic with the listeners works in regards to subscriber numbers. I'm hoping for good things.
Yeah. Don't believe him. He really does want them to grow. All right, okay, guys. So before we get into the episode this week, I thought I would just point out a comment in the comments from last week's episode, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. We had a little bit of chat last week about the meaning of OA already. I mean, obviously, it was an obvious path of conversation. So I think Konrad settled on, I'm not saying it's going to be a 100% theory yet, but Konrad settled on something to do with a vampire, I think.
Yeah, original Assamite, I believe, is what I settled on.
Yeah, original
Vampire the Masquerade reference.
Yeah, exactly. Now, based on our conversations about Steve last week, Awesome Power has come in with a fantastic one.
Go on.
Original Angster.
Well, that would have been me when I was about 14, to be honest. Like, I was a very angsty teen. So yeah, I'm very much on board with that as a name. She does seem quite angsty as well, Prairie. Like, she's always.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's something to complain about, hasn't she?
That's the funny thing. You actually are taking that as an explanation of Prairie's OA. I'm thinking, what if Steve starts getting called the OA as well, and everyone's called the OA?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, Steve. I mean, there's a few in that gang, as we'll get into in this episode, who would vie for that title, because it's like the sort of island of broken toys. This gang, it's just all manner of people with problems, basically.
Basically, like Sid's bedroom, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
All
exactly.
right. Well, let's get into it then. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
The OA, Season 1, Episode 2, New Colossus. Now, the show, before we get into the first scene here, the title of this episode, like, we can go into the titles if you want to, but the names of characters, the titles of episodes, loads of different symbolism within the show, is always pointing to big mythology and text and everything like this. It's interesting if you want to go down those lines of analysis eventually. It's just that I just wanted to get your opinion on the fact that it's always so in your face. You know, like Homer, Colossus, all these sort of things being thrown at you.
Yeah, I don't really mind it, to be honest. It's I think if something wears its symbolism on its sleeve, that's not necessarily a symptom of bad writing. It's just a case that they're saying, we're not going to try and conceal the fact that we're going to have some references to the Odyssey or the Iliad or whatever here. To be honest, I don't actually know that much of the mythology behind the Colossus of Rhodes, and I also didn't know that the Statue of Liberty is kind of referred to in the plaque that they read from later in the episode as the new Colossus. I'd never heard that before.
Interesting,
But yeah, I don't mind it too much as a fan, or I don't want to say fan because I got quite a lot of Greek mythology wrong in our previous season where we were talking about Dark. But as a fair weather fan of Greek mythology, I'm happy to see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the episode opens with Prairie, or I suppose we should call her Nina at this point.
Nina, yeah.
Yeah, she's in the a boarding school for the blind, and they're having what I've put in my notes as snake class.
Yeah, it was odd. So okay, I'm gonna put my cards on the table here because I said something to my partner while watching this that could get me in a little bit of hot water, which is that I saw them handling snakes and I saw it was quite a small class and it's in like a very nice building, high vaulted ceilings, oak wall, like paneling on the walls, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Xavier's School for the Gifted kind of thing, like an X-Men situation going on here. And then obviously as the scene progresses and we go into the next scene, it's like, oh, it's just a school for the blind. Not to say that blind people can't be gifted in other ways, but I was just like, oh boy, I've landed. I have to say that because I've thought it now, but I've potentially land myself in hot water with this.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. It's good of you to admit that, but well, the thing is, it does look like Xavier's School in X-Men.
It looks like Xavier's School for the Gifted. I was like, these are all mutants, and they definitely have superpowers. And then, but I think it's when Nina starts talking to another girl, and it's clear they're both blind. I was like, oh, okay, fine. I've maybe jumped the gun a little bit on this one.
yeah, perhaps. Okay, so there's also the little tidbit of information given to us that she plays every Sunday. She plays the violin to her father, the Russian Leonardo DiCaprio, over the phone.
Yes, apparently this is it's a theme that returns, or a musical motif, I guess, that returns throughout this episode. Apparently, it was written for the show, though. I went looking for it to see if it was like Shostakovich or Prokofiev or
the Russian composer,
Russian composer, and apparently it was written for the show. But it really does capture that feeling of kind of like Russian folk music. Put me in mind this. This is maybe going to, if we have any Russian listeners, I apologize for what I'm about to say. This is going to be 2 for 2 for Konrad on starting things off badly. But it put me in mind of American Tail, Fievel Goes West, like the theme for that, which is, obviously like Russian Jewish families who have moved to America. Yeah. But that's got a very distinct theme in it as well. And this reminded me of that a bit.
Yeah, well, that's a good film. At least you're not referencing Rocky IV again.
I watched that the other day.
Did you?
It's a great movie. That's not related to anything, but I was just like, you know what, Rocky IV's all right.
Ironically, that actually is the only Rocky film I've ever seen, and I watched it with you.
I mean, you don't need to see any of the others once you've seen that.
Yeah. I love how you were like, you've never seen Rocky? Right, okay, let's watch Rocky IV.
It's like... It is like objectively the second worst one, but it's so simple. It's just like, look, don't worry about anything. It's America versus communism. That's all you need to understand.
Yeah, and then the montage is it's worth it for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the dad says to Nina that you need to be basically be hidden. We're like playing a game of hide and seek, and you're gonna hide. Yeah. No one can know who you are, and you need to stop speaking Russian.
Yeah, so I think the dad's words here and the kind of performance of the actor imply that he's not letting on to his daughter how much danger he is in, and by extension she is in, which is kind of confirmed in a scene's time.
Yes, of course, and also just at the end of the scene, whenever she's talking to the dad on the phone, I love that he's I don't know. There's a few parts when she's telling her story. They lean into very cheesy sort of dialogue. Cheesy is a harsh word, but it's in a good way, right? You'll know what I mean in a second. So at the end, he goes, "I only have one last request," and he goes, "Play."
Yeah, I mean it's schmaltzy. It's very it can be a bit hackneyed, but it's performed well enough that it kind of earns that. And earns that like emotional high point, I guess.
No, and I'm only picking up on a bit of funniness in that after watching it like 3 or 4 times. Yeah. So then something happens to her father. We're not.
Yeah, who could have possibly predicted that?
Yeah. I don't quite know what. I had a bit of a question in my mind. The imagery of him sitting talking on the phone, it kind of looked like he was in prison, but also at the same time,
he had it was a weird place there because he had that kind of clear, like long clear glass next to him, which made it look like he was maybe talking through talking through a prison partition or something.
Yeah, but he had a mobile phone, so who knows what's going on. Maybe he's just in hiding. Obviously, he's in hiding.
Yeah, well, you can get mobile phones in prison. Maybe he got himself arrested because he thought he'd be safe from the Voy.
Yeah, the Voy. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So the aunt picks her up. Sorry. There's been a horrible accident with the father, and she goes to an orphanage, which we're told it's very lonely there.
I'm going to put heavy air quotes around the word orphanage.
Yeah. Okay. So So basically, this home. Okay, go on and tell me what you think it is.
Well, okay. So I mean, first off, we know from literally every Disney movie between the years like 1930 to 1970 that when a young girl is displaced from her loving father to go and live with her suspicious-looking aunt, she's in for a rough time. And actually, I mean, to be fair, like her aunt isn't kind of positioned as like a villainous stepmother, but she doesn't put her in the best situation, let's be honest, because this is clearly a brothel that she's living in.
It's really strange. Yeah, it's clearly a brothel. She gets Nancy and Abel come along to the rescue.
Can I just say, Abel's hair dye is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this scene. They're like, how do we make this clearly late 70s, early 80s man look younger? And the productions are like, hair dye.
Yeah,
just that.
Yeah,
just dye his hair brown.
Did you know that old men, when they have grey hair, before they turn grey, their hair actually had a colour in it? Let's put that colour back in.
I learned that in university.
Bit of rouge on the cheeks, you know.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I did look at it and thought, with that hair dye, with the bit of rouge on his cheeks, he's believably 60, 68. You know,
I mean, he looks like a 68-year-old who dyes his hair, is what he looks like. So I guess they've achieved that. I mean, I suppose actually it's only how old's Prairie in it? She's probably like 6 or 7 at this point, maybe.
Could even be 8 by this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
like 13
this is like
years.
Yeah, this is like 10 years before. I guess so like 13 years before she goes missing, because she's 21 when she goes missing. Mm-hmm. So, it's stretching the back. It is plausible, if unlikely. I'll say.
If this was Mythbusters, they'd be slamming down that metal plate with plausible on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they say that they're there to adopt a child, a little baby boy, and I love the aunt. It's just like they're asking questions about the aunt. Is like, have you got the money? You know, straight to the point. Nancy needs to go to the toilet, so she goes upstairs.
They just let people wander around, apparently, in this brothel. It's like, go into that bathroom. And it's like, oh no, I probably shouldn't have let her do that in retrospect, given we've got little girls like looking after babies here.
This is what I found was weird. Whenever Nancy found her and she was like, we're taking this one, right? I want this one. And the auntie was like, can't stop you. What do you mean you can't stop her?
Yeah, you literally can. You're a legal guardian. You're the only one who can stop this. But I'm glad they adopt her. I felt like the kind of relationship building between Nancy, Abel, and Prairie / Nina is very strong in this scene and very strong throughout this episode. Actually,
the writers came back. Brit Zal came back in this episode. You thought that the Steve thing was rushed last episode? Well, we'll show you we can actually build some relationships here.
Yeah, and I think as is the case with a lot of good writing, it kind of recontextualizes. I know our listeners know that I like that word. It recontextualizes a lot of what we've seen in the previous episode because. The relationship between Prairie, Nancy, and Abel is kind of a bit half baked in the previous episode, but then this now kind of explains why it's strained at the point that she's coming back, and it gives it a lot more context, a far richer context. So I really enjoyed this scene.
Yeah, exactly. I love the actor who plays Abel. Like in terms of the way I think he's very subtle and he's very sort of human. Whereas Nancy's really highly strung, very well played as well. But no, it's really good. So in her childhood, then it sort of shows a few little kind of montagey thing of like a couple of things. Like she gets home first of the time, she puts her toes into the carpet.
Nice, lovely little callback to the feet on the carpet.
Yeah, from the previous episode. Abel's helping her climb a tree.
Yeah, she's better at climbing trees. Well, certainly than I am now, but better than I was at that age as well. Like particularly for a blind girl, she is like Spider-Man up that thing.
Yeah, again, Rocky 4. That's
Yeah.
that's what happens in the Russian wilderness.
Yeah.
So that she's learning Braille, which I thought was cool. The idea of learning Braille is crazy to me. Like, I know I learned how to read and write, so it's probably the same. It's the same, you know. I'm a teacher, right? But I still think, how on earth do you teach a 5-year-old how to read? You know, it's really.
I don't actually know how Braille works, whether it is just letters or whether it's
just a dot in certain formation, I think, and you just recognize the letters, yeah.
But it is literally just 1-for-1 to letters. It's not like a different script with different kind of like word.
Good question. I would assume it is letters in the. Is there just one type of Braille? So maybe I would assume there is letters, because it helps to translate from the people who who go blind later in life.
Yeah. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, same.
I don't know. And she also, during this kind of like time skip period, we see her sleepwalking and playing with knives, which is
Abel's sitting there recording, saying she does it all the time.
I'll say this for Abel: he's the good cop in that parenting partnership. Yeah. I feel a bit sorry for Nancy, because she's the one who always has to be the bad guy and be like, maybe we should stop our 8-year-old daughter from bringing a butcher's knife to bed.
Yeah. Like,
don't disturb her, let her finish. And then she starts stabbing the dog.
There was that little moment, actually, whenever she was trying to get her to stop, she was like, prairie, and then she actually gave in and went, Nina, and that's when she stopped. Which I thought that was really cool. Really nice little bit of, I don't know, like characterization into the Nina character at that age, I suppose. All right, so then they go to the psychiatrist, and I've got this written down, because this is fantastic. The psychiatrist goes, Prairie thinks her father is alive and sneaking her messages about where to find them in her dreams. She also believes her dreams are premonitions, and the Russian mafia are after her.
Yeah. Like, he's a skeptic. He's a skeptic of this story. But I mean, when I was listening to him reading these things off, it's like, well, she believes the Russian mafia are after her, which we know to be true. Mm-hmm. So, I guess we don't know it to be true, but it's pretty heavily implied that it was the boy who had that caused the accident and caused her father's accident as well, I guess. So we're pretty sure that's true. So and the dreams are premonitions. We've seen her have a premonition of her falling into the lake. So 2 for 3 made me think, well, is it that unreasonable to think that this is 3 for 3 and that her father is still alive in some capacity and sending her messages on how to find her?
Could be.
That was my thinking.
Well, yeah. Well, if she is like, we'll get into it later in the episode, but there's definitely, like, whether or not you believe a certain whatever's going on, it seems like something is maybe sending her a certain way, possibly. For what reason we don't know, and for if it's a good or a bad reason we don't know. Well,
it could be. Yeah, by the end of this episode, there's been a slight spanner thrown into those works. It's like, oh, was it just this twat?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say who that is. You'll have to listen on and find out who I think is a twat. But it could have been set up for nefarious means. Is all I'll say for now.
I think okay, all right. I'm on the same page as you, I think. So, also, just a little, sort of before we move into her teenage/early adult time, they also get a little bit of her being in the bath, and when her head goes under the water and she sort of hears the water, it gives her a flashback of the bus crash as well. Yeah,
and this is another callback I felt to her in the bath later when she gets back in the first episode. So it's just it enriches what we have already seen of the characterization of these three people by establishing that it's a routine of behavior that has been going on for 13 years. Well, I guess actually 13. What would it be? 20 years by that point.
20 years at this point.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. You're right. She went missing at 21, so therefore, whenever Abel was de-aged, he was 20 years younger.
Yeah.
Not 10 years younger. So take that Mythbusters plausible away.
Yeah. False.
Little less plausible.
Stamp that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's just like Jack Nicholson. Like, he's looked in his 60s since he was about 28, and maybe that's what they're going for.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so in her teenage and adult life, first thing she has a dream, or I suppose we'll go with her terminology, a premonition of her climbing the Statue of Liberty. When she gets into... Now, did you recognize that was the Statue of Liberty straight away, or when you saw the face?
I did, yeah. I started making jokes to my partner about this being a Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah. Well, it is going to be some sort of...
You blew it up!
It has to be some sort of like apocalyptic monster film or something like that, because you don't have the Statue of Liberty in it unless that's the thing.
Oh yeah, like listen, Independence Day taught us that if you're depicting a landmark, it's because something's going to blow it up at some point. So, is it going to be the humans or is it going to be the apes? That's the only question I have. And where does Charlton Heston feature in this movie?
Tune in next week. Okay, so she sees her dad in the head. Now, this is something that I find really interesting, because in this show and in Jungle to Jungle, the 90s classic,
I've never seen that.
Oh, it's my first film I remember seeing in the cinema. I don't know if it was my first film I saw, but it was the first one I remember seeing.
Jungle to Jungle. That doesn't ring any bells at all. I don't
Tim
think I've
Allen.
heard of that.
Tim Allen has.
Of course, it's a Tim Allen movie. I should have known.
So I don't support all his political views, but, but you know, I made the video about the Santa Claus, and Donnie Stats comes in and goes, I could leave all the Trump stuff to one side.
Yeah, like and his views on women. Like he's not the most progressive of men. To be honest.
And the drug trafficking.
Yeah. All told, Tim Allen is a net loss for humanity.
But gosh darn that if he didn't remind me of my father. Anyway, so basically, in Jungle to Jungle, I'm not going to go into the story of Jungle to Jungle. You know, we'll do a best movie podcast ever special on Jungle to Jungle films. But basically, the guy Mimi Siku is climbing the outside of the Statue of Liberty, and inside people can see him out of there. And in this, she went into the head as well. So this is the interesting part. I think that room inside of the head is real, which is weird to me because I've seen it in real life. Now, from a fair distance away, and it's not as big as you think it is.
Well, it's big enough to fit the Ghostbusters in it because they pilot it in Ghostbusters 2. But
well, that's true. But I'm always surprised to see that, because when I was in New York and like was going on past it on the ferry, it didn't, like, it was very small from where I could see it. Obviously, you know, small enough. But I always thought, geez, okay, there must not be in a room in that head. Jungle to Jungle lied to me, but no, the OA tells me it's true. There is. I
didn't even realize that you could actually go up. I mean, obviously it's hollow, but I didn't realize that you could go up inside it. I would have thought there wouldn't be much of a view.
But that's what I mean. So whenever she went and saw her father, they were inside the head of it, because you could see the little windows like around her thing here, like her crown.
He has weird candle fingers as well, or maybe he's just holding something with like kind of spindly candles on it. I didn't really understand, but it looked like he was kind of doing this with like little sticks of candles on each of his fingers, like his hands were birthday cakes.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy at all.
He had 21 candles, which is what made Prairie realize that she had to go on her 21st birthday.
Is that what that was? Okay, I didn't put two and two, or indeed 19 and 2 together on that one.
Yeah. But actually, what I will say, she said, I said 21 candles. Actually, I'll put it the way Prairie put it. 21 wax candles, because we all know there's a lot of types of candles in the world. Like, what other type of candles is she talking? Like electric candles?
Wooden.
Yeah, wooden candles. Yeah,
it's just a log, Prairie.
Yeah, I love that. Just extra words thrown in just for the flavor. You know, she's telling the story, Konrad.
Yeah, she's a raconteur. You know, she needs to give it a little bit of flavor.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so next up. Oh no! So whenever she says, "Oh, I saw my father in the dream," that means I have to go and see him. Jesse, then, who's a character we'll come to know, Jesse says, "Maybe you just dreamed of him because you missed him." Come on,
it's a fair point. It's a fair point, Jesse. Like, I felt like when he said it, everyone was like, he has made a good point there, Prairie. To be honest, like the air came out of the room a little bit because Prairie sort of constructed this mysticism around what she's talking about, and it's like, oh no. We've got a skeptic in the room.
Yeah, and the Prairie's just like, well, normal dreams don't actually make your nose bleed, so...
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of which, you know, she gets a nosebleed in the next scene, which they've set it up. When she has a nosebleed, what she's seeing is a premonition of some description, so... Take that, Jesse.
It is exactly. Exactly. What does he know? So planned to go and meet the father. She goes there. She sits there all day long. And then eventually she has to go because it's closing time. And basically, the worker who works on the island reads her, because she asks her, "Can you read me the sign for the statue?" And there's a load of stuff read about, talking about the woman, like the role of the Statue of Liberty, sort of welcoming people in and stuff like this. What did you take anything from this little?
Yeah. So there's a few things I thought really about this scene. First off, that I got a theory wrong here. I said that I thought she was going to be abducted or kidnapped. And I guess she does. It does kind of seem like it happens by the end of this, but the initial kind of impetus to go and leave her family was voluntary, which I was a bit surprised by. The other is that the decision to be like, right, my dad's in New York. I don't know where, and I don't know how, but I'll just go to New York, one of the most populated cities in the world, and we'll figure it out from there. That sounds like the kind of thing a 21-year-old would do. Just be like, there can't be that many people in New York, surely. I'll just walk around being like, Dad, and eventually it'll turn up. But yeah, so the speech that the police or security guard on Ellis Island, is that the name of the
Island,
that he's reading, seems quite poignant to the situation that Prairie and the group are in as she's retelling the story to them. Particularly the line about like Mother of Exiles. I kind of joked earlier about how her group seems to be like the Island of Misfit Toys a little bit. Like it's all people with baggage and with problems in their lives, and she's maybe identified that. And that's part of what's brought them all together, and she is kind of this maternal figure to them in some way. So I thought that was quite relevant, and I'm interested to see more of the exiles, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because I sort of, in a way, I was kind of hinting at that last week because you could sort of pick it up a little bit from the way that Prairie was speaking when she was speaking through YouTube and saying, you know, if you're going through a transition in your life or whatever, kind of the way she phrased it. So it's kind of alluding to that. In this episode, actually coming into what we're coming into now, the character of Buck, I think, pretty much lays that out exactly what you just said. So obviously didn't show up. She goes and plays violin in the underground, waiting for her father to come. And then father didn't find her, someone else did, and then she ends the session. And you know, when she ended the session, right, in my mind I just went to, jeez, she's like a dungeon master in D&D who just never gives the players a chance to do anything. She's just like, let me tell you the story.
Yeah, she's railroaded them. She's railroaded them all the way through to the end of this. It's not good DMing, frankly. It's maybe that's the game they want to play. Who can say?
Yeah.
But I mean, my first thought when they all came out of the semi-built building where they were convening is that they're going to be exhausted tomorrow because she's kept them up until it's about easily
dawn.
5
It's
in the morning.
literally dawn.
Yeah, it's literally dawn. It's like, come on, guys. And then when she gets back to her house and Nancy and Abel start inquiring about where she's been, she's like, I went on a walk. It's like, what, for 5 hours, Prairie? Like, where did you walk?
Well, they don't know what time she left.
That's true. They don't know what time she
should have left 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, she's gambling there. But
you have skipped over something that I found was very interesting, though, and it took me my third watch to actually listen to this line and get what it meant. Not get what it meant, but actually... Okay, so maybe you picked this up, but you just didn't think it was worthy noting down. Before she comes back to the house, and before they start cooking breakfast, Nancy and Abel, before Nancy sees Prairie walking outside, it just cuts into the bedroom of Abel and Nancy. Abel turns around to Nancy and says,
I did not write this down.
We haven't done that in a while.
I had no time for this smut.
And then Nancy goes, well, we can now. As if like the last 7 years, like
Abel has been he's been dying.
That's why he's aged. That's why he's aged so much.
Yeah, it caught me off guard a little bit, that, to be honest. But note to everyone: old people have sex too. Like it's not purely the domain of the young. And here we see it proven as Abel and Nancy. To be honest, they've got a fucking cheek complaining about Prairie going out for a walk because they've been using the time productively, as it turns out.
Well, that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but they should be thanking her. Yeah, go out all night.
Yeah. That's why Abel's like, we'll give her an hour. We'll give her an hour.
He hands her like $20 and is like, go see a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so she agrees to go and see an FBI trauma counselor if she's allowed to walk for an hour a night. Which is good for the story, I would say, because if Abel said to her, you can have a 5-hour walk every night, then this whole story might be over in a couple of days. Whereas for us, we actually get it strung out over the season now, which is good.
Yeah, so that's kind of something that I'm starting to maybe piece together is what the plot structure of these episodes is going to look like. And I wonder if it is going to be like this, where it's sort of Prairie telling the story while we see members of did you say they're referred to as the boys, this group?
There's the boys and BBA, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but so while we get the backstories of the members of this group, because that is kind of just what this episode is. It's purely backstory on the OA's experiences, and then stuff with French in this episode. So yeah, I wonder if that's going to be kind of the structure that we return to for a lot of other episodes.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me a little bit of like a crime documentary, in that sometimes like you have like the first while of it is telling the story of what happened, and then some of them in the last half an hour of the documentary are like, it's like, and now they're actually working with the people who they were interviewing to try and find out more details. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It becomes it assumes the present tense. It's like, let's go together to figure this out. Which I kind of hope this does. I hope it's not just all her being like, gather round and let me spin you a tale, young.
Yeah, like the whole 2 seasons are.
Yeah, it's just like The Hobbit, basically. It's just Bilbo.
Out of curiosity, actually, we haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but obviously it does get cancelled after 2 seasons. So I'm wondering, is there anything that's already come up where you're like, I'd be really annoyed if I didn't find out that?
Probably like the lady speaking Arabic, like in the astral dimension. That's like, and I have some ideas, I have some theories. From like for what I think might be kind of going on the human level in this, what the characters' motivations are, where we might be going. But that like full on balls to the wall nuts sci-fi thing that happened at the end of the first episode, I'm a bit like, how the hell are we arriving at that? And do they have enough time in 2 seasons of television to even scratch the surface of what's going on there? Because that seems broad and high concept is what that seems.
Yeah, very high concept. This show is very high concept, I will say.
Yeah.
Okay, so cool. So French, then we get, as you say, we get French. He's got his brothers. He's feeding them cereal out of a huge bowl.
Yeah, very, very kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Like it's very down and dirty. You all need to eat. I haven't got time to do the washing up, so we're all going to eat out the same bowl.
Yeah, and I noticed something in this scene it's a symptom of my sort of eye for detail in a negative way, but also because I've watched it a few times now. But whenever he, like the actor then who plays French, Alfonso, goes to eat his own spoon of cereal, there's a split second where I just know the actor's thinking, right, which spoon didn't that little child actor lick?
Yeah.
You
I mean, you'd be thinking that if it was your brother as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't want whatever has been in that child's mouth in mine.
Yeah, he hadn't brushed his teeth yet, as we know.
No, he hadn't brushed his teeth.
Toothbrush was dry. Toothbrush was dry.
Yeah, his toothbrush was dry. But yeah, so French eating, like, there's really, it's really kind of expedited, but very, very well realized characterization for French in this episode, and it's kind of painting in broad strokes to a certain extent, but it worked for me. He's the one who's looking after his younger brothers. I presume they're his younger brothers. I don't know if it's ever explicitly said, which begs the question, where are his parents, or where is the sort of family unit that's going to help him do this? We see him taking cocaine, what I guess is cocaine in this scene.
Doing some drugs off a spoon.
Doing some drugging. And there's this, by the end of this episode, they've done a really good job of establishing that this is a character who, has prospects, has a way out of this situation, but is kind of being pulled back into it by the situation that he finds himself in, which is it's a really good job they do a really good job to characterize this guy in as short a time as they have.
Yeah. Okay. So before we go on to the sort of the school scenes with him, I'm a bit disappointed, Konrad. I was hoping whenever I said, "Well, Konrad, how are you this week?" I was really hoping you'd say, "Well, my butthole stinks, but I'm doing all right."
I took the high. I almost actually, when we were talking about his brother then, and you said he didn't want, we knew he hadn't brushed his teeth, and I was like, I almost did the butthole stinks line, because I was like, this would fit here, but you know what? I'm going to take the high road, and yet here we are. Not 5 minutes later, the tone has been lowered.
Come on, the OA lowered it.
Yeah, that is true. It's the OA's fault.
That was a laugh out loud line, because it's just so out of left field.
I don't even understand what point he's making there. It's like, what do you want your brother to do with that information, or are you just trying to be vulgar for the sake of? I
think he's just being like a little brother who's like, I've got an older brother. Right, and me and my younger brother would have always taken the piss out of the fact that my older brother would have felt like the grown up. You know, so like I'm sure that was actually that brother being like, you know, who do you think you are? Like, you're not my dad, you know. And he's just like, well, but my butthole stinks. But yeah, as if like that's important information.
Yeah, it's like, good job, kid, nice one.
Just winding him up for being patronizing, you know. But yeah, they get to school, and Steve texts French a picture of the bus and saying, 1995, it happened.
This is unfair, this bit, because I was like, oh, who's this mysterious character sending French images of the bus in Russia, and kind of like trying to theory my way through it, and then literally like 5 minutes later it's like, oh, it's just Steve, and he doesn't have his number because he doesn't like Steve.
Well, it said at the top of the phone "Lost Boy," and I think it also says "Lost Boy" on Steve's laptop in the first episode or something like that.
Oh, okay, because French responds, "Who is this?" Like, when
he doesn't know. Yeah, he doesn't know who he is. Yeah,
but which I just found really funny, that like French is just like big leaguing Steve's like, I don't care enough to know your number.
Yeah, it's interesting because what do you call it? The actor who plays Steve was in Neverland, a TV series, and that's why they used Lost Boy as his like little tag, you know. But anyway, so athletic scholarship, French is getting one apparently.
I guess you weren't supposed to laugh out loud at this bit, but when he's doing when he's doing the call, the conference call with the coach or whatever from university, and the guy's like, "You did an essay on bees." It's just like, what? Just an essay on bees, and it's like, and then obviously it's not even the essay that he wrote.
Yeah.
But it's just so like, I love the fact that he like. This guy like musters the enthusiasm to pretend that he's excited about an essay on bees.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, what French says then is like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like really serious, like low income families, whatever. Something really serious, like a really meaty subject.
I think it's CPR that he.
Oh,
CPR. So it's like really like technical.
And this guy's on the phone's probably like, damn it, CPR. I wanted the bees guy.
Yeah, he like shouts to like someone in the other room, like, "Is it too late to get the bees guy?"
Yeah.
and then they've offered it to him now. He's got to take it.
They have to take it. Like, all right. So then he says to, like, the coach says to him, "Right, you've got it now. Don't do anything weird." And then French walks out of the cafeteria, sees Jesse, Steve, and Buck. It's like, right, maybe Jesus. I can't hang around with these guys anymore.
Yeah. That's like the sword of Damocles that's hovering over French's character, as he has this way out of this situation, but I expect that merely by associating with Steve, it's gonna put his future in jeopardy. So hopefully French's storyline doesn't end tragically, because he seems like, of those characters, he and Buck seem like the nicest ones, I will say.
Oh yeah, they definitely get along the best, I think, out of all of them.
Yeah.
Sort of, they seem to have the two pairs, like French and Buck, and Jesse and Steve. And I love that Buck comes over and is like, "Hey, can I help? Can I do something?" And like Jesse and Steve are like, "Yeah, we found the bus, but we can't find anything else. But we found the bus, right?" And then like Buck just comes and goes, "I'll look up Russian mines." And they're like, brilliant idea. I just love the idea of Steve and Jesse sitting there for like 2 hours, like like not doing anything, getting it all wrong, and then Buck's like, "Well, just look up the mine," you know?
Yeah, they're not setting the world of academia on fire, I think, but Steve and Jesse.
Yeah, they also mentioned Asheville again. Apparently, BBA seems to have got them off the back. You know, well, I suppose the OA going to visit BBA and just completely putting her down seems to have made her realize.
Yeah. So I guess that's I didn't actually catch whether they were confirming it or whether they're discussing it in the positive or the negative. It does get mentioned, but I guess it's just to maintain that threat for Steve in the background, that if he kind of screws up again, he's off to military school.
I don't even think it expressly said that it was off the cards. I think it might even still be happening. Like, they don't actually know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think the whole point of it is Steve doesn't know what's happening till it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so Alfonso's definitely wavering. He doesn't really... He's sort of seeing his future as not part of this group. He tells his mom about the scholarship. And she just says, "Well, are you done with Harvard then?" She's not impressed. Well, she wasn't impressed in the beginning, but then eventually she does come around and say that she's proud of him.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. There's always, it's kind of like classical dynamic here, where you've got the sort of promising child who can escape what seems like a fairly toxic environment, but the family ties will drag him back into it. And I wasn't sure whether this was his mother or the guy at the conference call said like his abuela, which is a grandmother in Spanish. So I don't know whether this is his mother or his grandmother, or whether he's lied maybe about who his closest relation is. But
or maybe that's meant to be like a joke of this coach being like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you know what I mean?
Oh, maybe, yeah, that could totally be it, actually. Like, just assume that because French is, I'm assuming he's Hispanic,
or maybe abuela is actually just a word for matriarch.
It could be, yeah. My Spanish isn't that good, to be honest, but mainly this is based on Jane the Virgin, if I'm honest, because she has an abuela. But yeah, so it's a classic conundrum for this character, and I feel like I feel like the show isn't too harsh to his mother or this female character. But I feel like it's not that interested in being judgmental of her at the moment, which is good. I would have found it a little bit off-putting if they kind of really push the knife in and were like, look how rubbish this woman is. She's obviously has some of her own problems. It seems like she might be like gambling while she's like in bed. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how that relationship between them develops.
Awesome. Okay, so Buck runs into French outside the shop. And again, there's a couple of moments in this show which are actually quite funny. I liked how Buck was like, "You're bringing milk? That's weird." French is just like, no, I'm not going. Can't be caught at the drug house because basically that's where Steve deals his drugs out of. So it makes sense. Don't be caught in the drug den. And then
fair enough, yeah.
He just throws in, it's different for Steve. He's fucking his own life up.
Yeah, which is fair enough, to be honest. Like the stakes for Steve are very much under his own control. If only he could be a bit less of a prick.
Yeah, exactly. And then Buck sort of has this conversation as well, where Buck is putting out the idea that maybe OA chose us for a reason. I think this sort of gets into French's head a bit. French then says, "I don't need your help. I do everything on my own," which sparked a little bit for me, like the first episode of a teenager sort of diagnosing their own problems a little bit again. But at the same time, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility of a teenager just being like, "I do everything on my own." I think that's fair enough. But
and there's mirrors in that characterization, I think, between French and the OA. The OA's kind of willfulness to go off and try and fix her own problems lands her in a lot of hot water as well in the story that she's telling, and I think that behavior is very much mirrored in some of French's attitude here.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a good point. So he changes his mind, and they go. I really respected Buck in this next scene when Buck came straight in and said to Steve, "Stop selling drugs out of this house." And he's like, "What?" He says, "Just stop." So I thought that was pretty good.
Well, then Steve like confirms his prick status by telling Buck that the
supply's cut.
Won't supply testosterone to them anymore.
Yeah, and then
Which is a really shitty thing to do to someone you're supposed to be friends with.
Really, really shitty. Do you want a sweet memento to remind you of all those good times you've had listening to the After Dark podcast? Well, how about pick up a t-shirt with the brand new design by my wife Ema. It depicts Konrad and I going into the cave. What will we get up to next? Link in the description. Okay, so biggest mistake that Prairie ever made. What she explains is, I like the way that this is put, actually. So she starts telling the story again, and I like the way she put this. It was quite nice. The biggest mistake she ever made was thinking that casting a beautiful net would only catch beautiful things.
Yeah, there's a very lyrical quality to that line, and it immediately the where we go from that line, I feel, is coloured immensely by it. So you kind of, it's presented initially as quite a positive encounter, but there's always that thought in the back of your mind where it's just like, well, we kind of know where this is going.
Yeah, like exactly. Like it's interesting because if you took it away and you watched the scenes without her narrating them, you maybe would have really not seen what was coming, But again, as you say, when she's alluding to the fact that it was a bad thing that happened to her from the start, it just means that whenever old Jason Isaac appears, you immediately don't trust him.
Yeah, I'd like to point out as well, I called Jason Isaac from the back of his head, like, because there's this lovely. It's a shame it's not a full tracking shot, to be honest. There are some cuts in it as it's following him, following her music through Grand Central Station. But there's this really cool shot behind him which really builds the tension of his character reveal, and then it pulls out to this very, very wide shot which has both of them kind of standing opposite each other, but they're quite significant distance between them, which I really liked as a character reveal. But yeah, Jason Isaac, it was great to see him. I pretty much immediately called him as a bad guy, to be honest.
Hello to Jason Isaacs. I'll say it once. I'm not going to say it every episode. That's for all you listeners of the Commode podcast out there. But basically, he wears earplugs on the train, which I thought was an interesting thing. So he literally wears earplugs just to drown out the noise. Is that a done thing? I've never done that. Seen anyone doing that?
I didn't even notice that, actually, to be honest. But yeah, I've not heard of people doing that.
He took it out to hear the music, you know. Oh
yeah, I guess I assume they were like headphones, but yeah, maybe they were just earplugs.
It looks like a little blue gelatinous cube, you know. All right, so his name is Hap, Dr. Hunter Aloysius Percy.
Yeah. Oh, Percy. I had Peyton. I don't know why I wrote Peyton down. Yeah. So he's a big fan of initialisms, or I guess this is an acronym technically. But in the space of like a 5-minute conversation, he's referred to himself as Hap, and he's also used the initialism NDE.
NDE.
Which makes me think that maybe the OA is going to be something that comes from him as well.
He's throwing them out everywhere.
Yeah, just I'm a busy man. I haven't got time to call you Olivia Appleby or whatever your name is. So you're just the OA from now on.
That would be hilarious. Yeah. So NDEs, he picked up that she had a near-death experience based on the transcendent nature of her violin playing.
Yeah, that sounds like horseshit to me. I think that he was looking for her. Maybe not actively in Grand Central Station, but I feel like it feels too convenient to me that this guy who is so invested in analyzing near-death experiences that he is completely compromised ethically, just so happened to hear Prairie playing the violin in Grand Central Station. That feels way too convenient to me. So I think he was actively seeking her, or seeking people like her.
Oh, he was seeking them, definitely. And I think even based on the fact that he did hear her, whether he knew she was there or not, or whether he was seeking her particularly, I think he seems like the person who would always have his ear to the ground for these moments where he'd realize that people had NDEs, you know what I mean? Yeah. Having said that, 100% as well, it would make complete sense as well. We know that there's a history of her being in hiding as well, so there is certain sort of evidence here that people would know about her and things that have happened to her. So yeah, fair enough. So they go to have some oysters.
It's a very odd choice of food for a very well. In fact, there's like this. Maybe I completely misread this, and maybe you didn't feel this, but there's a very sexual undertone to this first scene with them. Like, they're eating oysters, which are an aphrodisiac, and then he produces this device, which, I'm just going to say it, looks like a woman's genitalia.
It's actually two ears, but yeah, it does. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I was just like, this is a very sexual scene, Jason. But maybe that was just my filthy mind, taking it to places that it wasn't intended by the creators.
No, I definitely think there was a little spark in between them there for a little bit of the time. Obviously, us as an audience watching on, thinking, no, don't have this spark. Don't go with this man. But he didn't. So basically, he said something about the fact that he didn't like in university when he was in medical school. He didn't like that he wasn't allowed to ask questions that had no answers. They're the most important questions to him. He thinks, what is consciousness? Where do we go after this place? And then he also, in a really interesting sort of setup to his mission in life, I thought it was a really interesting way to set it up, is that whenever he was working in medical school, he heard, whenever a patient flatlined, he heard a whoosh.
Yeah.
And then he heard the whoosh again, and then they came back, and he's like, well, that means it's like a whoosh they left, whoosh they came back. If they left, they must have went somewhere. And in my mind, that's like, if that actually happened in real life, you could 100% understand why someone would get obsessed with it.
Yeah, I think I think at the sort of kernel of what he is fascinated by is 100% justified, but I think he does a really good job, Jason Isaacs that is, of slowly revealing over the course of this episode the extent of his obsession, and the degree to which he has compromised any kind of medical or scientific ethics in pursuit of it. And I wonder how much of that they're going to show us. Like, how is he hearing this whoosh? Is he just hearing it without, like, without any kind of tools? Is he using a stethoscope to hear it? Like, what? Or is he using this device that he has, that he's given to, or that he shows to Prairie? In this
like he said, he's got a patent for it. Well, obviously, he's part of his skill is that he can create devices that can hear things, really, really closely. So he maybe have something like that. Also, he did say that the human heartbeat is more unique than a fingerprint. What did you think about that?
I don't know enough about the science of that to know whether that's true. I feel like it's probably not, but it's kind of, I suppose if you take that as take that as true, what he said there, it's almost like a mirror of the him being struck by her violin playing, her transcendent violin playing, in that if you know what to listen for in very, very well performed music, you can hear the difference between good music and amazing music, or a good performance and an amazing performance of the same piece of music.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's being hinted at here, that he has this ear for a special person's heartbeat, I guess, or a special person's kind of being.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my maths brain took over, to be honest with you, and I was like, right, okay, unique heartbeat. I was like, well, not if you're looking at like in like a 10-second range, people can have the same heartbeat in a 10-second range. But then if you look at it over their whole life and you sort of think about how everyone does different things, your heart speeds up and slows down. And then I thought, right, okay, let's really take this into maths. Let's look at the distance of time between each beat.
I feel like the fact that you've gone on a maths route with this is fundamentally ignoring the kind of artistry that is being implied.
But I think he's right, though, is what my point is. So I think that when you look at the distance of time between each heartbeat and you took it to the maximum level of accuracy you could, there'll be no real. It would be very unlikely there'll be two distances of time between your heartbeats that would be the same. Okay.
So
if you were to then have a sequence of numbers where each one was the seconds between heartbeats, and it was like 1.0000034 or whatever, and you had all these different numbers, that would probably give you a sequence of numbers which never repeated, and it didn't have a pattern. I.e., like the number pi, 3.141. Okay, so in my mind, he's right, and I think that if you took it as a sequence of numbers in terms of time of heartbeat, geez, Hap, I'm on your side here, boy.
Well, there you go. No, I feel like he's not a numbers man, is my impression of him. Like he deals it. He's a big picture guy, but maybe he is. Maybe that'll be the revelation, is that he's like this cold, calculating figure who's purely into the numbers of the situation.
Listen, this show is not dark. I have to get my maths in where I can. Okay, so
yeah, fair enough.
All right. They get on a plane. He can fly. He can fly a plane.
Yeah, that is not what when he said, "Oh, I'm flying home," I was like, "Oh, you're going to be the pilot, are you?" Like that wasn't my understanding of the situation, and I feel like Prairie should have started asking questions at the point where they were getting on a Cessna, and I'd like, I know she's blind, so obviously she's probably only aware of what she's being told.
Yeah.
But you could probably tell what kind of plane you're getting on by feel, and yeah, the fact no one was checking her passport, and I guess they still do check your passport when you when you fly out of like private airfields, but if
it's internal in America, you don't need a passport. I think you just need your ID.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
So like internal in the UK, you don't need a passport. You just need an ID. Depending on the airline, but most of them is just the ID. Just like
that is true. Well, I mean, she still should have been asking questions at this point.
Yeah,
but she's 21. She's made a bad mistake, and then she's making further mistakes to compound the results of it.
Yeah, I'm not blind, okay, but I'll say this: even as a person with sight, I wouldn't open the window of the plane.
No, there was a small part of my brain that when she opened the window of the plane, I was like, is he gonna like push her out and then grab her ankle to try and make her have a near-death experience. Because I was already like, I don't want to give too many glimpses into the theory matrix already at this early stage, but I had a couple of theories in this episode that kind of came true within this episode. Where as soon as I saw him, I was like, well, he's a bad guy, and he's gonna take her prisoner for like his experiments. And so as this sequence of scenes between these two characters was going on, I was like, when are we going to get to the bit where you try and kill her?
Yeah.
Because like, it's coming. I know it's coming.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, the writing's on the hap. But basically, there's a really lovely dreamlike piano score going on as well in this part. The whole time she's with Hap, where before she realizes what's happening, it's really dreamlike. It's really sort of you could float away on a cloud sort of score going on.
Yeah.
Doesn't last forever. Forever.
No, it does not last that long at all. And then the fact that he's flying the plane as well, as I was saying before, like it kind of, there is that quality to it that you were talking about, this kind of dreamlike quality, but there is also an increasing sense of isolation for this character. You know, wherever she is, she was in New York, no one knew she was in New York, and then she's been flown by a guy she doesn't really know by himself to a house she doesn't know where it is. So, you know, she's getting in more and more danger, and there's this growing sense of dread that really kind of reaches a peak as she enters Hap's presumably home.
Yeah, home sweet home.
Yeah.
So she goes in. She notices it's very quiet. There's no roads nearby.
Yep.
That
sounds great.
He also points out, it's like, if you go watch the episode again, knowing what happens at the end, there's so much he points out, which is he's just telling her, I'm going to put you in my basement.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a bed downstairs in the lab. You know, double glazing. The winters are terrible here, right? So
yeah.
all this sort of thing. Uses the phone to call the parents.
He puts on I can never remember the
operator
pronunciation. Yeah, it's either Jim Croce or Jim Croce. I can never remember how it's pronounced, but operator by
what a
him.
troll.
Yeah, which is like, you son of a bitch. Like, just
troll level over 9,000 there.
Do you think he had that ready? It was like, Alexa, play my kidnapping playlist. And
Alexa, if you could choose the most ironic song for this moment.
My Alexa's about to start playing in the corner, so this is where I reveal that my Alexa just responded to that. So we'll see if it does play my kidnapping playlist. I don't have one of those.
Oh, I really, really wish that I was coming out of your loudspeakers right now. Alexa, play Operator by Jim Croce.
That would out me as a fellow. I don't even know what group Hap belongs to or anything, but I'm right along there with you, Hap. I've got my own kidnapping playlist ready to go.
Yeah, could you imagine if when you said that, if it said playing your kidnap playlist?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, takes her downstairs. Like, us as an audience now are seeing what's happening because the huge metal doors with the keypads that he's taken her through takes her all the way downstairs. It stays very tight on them, which I like, until eventually she knows that it stays tight on actually for the rest of the episode. There's never a moment we get the whole room, and so she eventually gets put into there. Into the room. She then tries to walk away, smacks her head. She starts questioning things. She's like, oh no, this smells like rocks.
And the floor's like wet as well, which I have some thoughts about.
Oh, okay, really? Okay, awesome. And then the way he says it is like, you're going to be an incredible asset, Prairie.
Yeah, this guy is a bastard. I called it. But yeah, I mean, the fact she seems to be in like some kind of glass tube or room makes me think that maybe, and the floor is wet, makes me think that maybe he is going to drown her. And you like, there's a kind of drainage pipe in the floor, so you can fill it with water, half drown her, make her have a near-death experience, and then resuscitate her in order to study what's happening and where she's actually going, which
interesting.
Yeah, maybe that'll be wrong, but I like the fact that although we have seen his face already, we focus on Homer's voice instead of his face at the end of this episode, because it's what Prairie would experience as well.
Yeah, so I was actually going to yeah, exactly. Yes, I love that. It's through we're experiencing it through her ears, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's actually two male voices at the end of the episode. Now I watch most things with subtitles because I have children running around and crying babies and stuff. So or sleeping babies, and you have the volume very low. But so I noticed, I knew this 100% anyway because the different characters' names were on there saying who was talking. But did you pick up that there were two different voices, not just one?
I didn't actually.
Okay.
It sounded like the same voice to me.
Not yeah. So so I think you'll realize when I say the first voice was very much speaking, and it sounded different too. But the first voice was very much speaking and saying, you're going to question this. Just remember, it's all your fault. You got yourself, and they're very sort of accusatory. And then the other voice, which is probably like that first voice. I take that first voice as someone saying, you did this to yourself, and that's sort of what she's feeling. And then,
so do you interpret that as internal monologue?
I'm not going to say what I interpreted it as, but that was the shift in tone happened whenever I realized it was Homer, and then he was saying stuff like you'll find your freedom, you'll learn to live with it, you'll basically, he was building her back up again.
Yeah, okay. You'll find your freedom in sleep, which sounds, for someone who has dreams that are sometimes premonitions, that sounds like it might be foreshadowing something. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so then finally he said, "What's your name?" She said, "Prairie, Prairie," and then it goes, "All I'm," goes out to her in the house, "Homer." And then she runs away. And I'm gonna make a joke here, and I will make it many times because I've actually watched all the way up to like episode 7 of season 2 in the last week, just sort of refreshing my mind for the podcast, just so I know what's coming. And there's been about 5 times so far that there's been a big dramatic moment like this. And as soon as it's happened, I've just turned to Emer and went, "We have our heading." Like, I just love that. Like, it's just, like a real dramatic moment, like just like Jack Sparrow, "We have our heading." It's not really work here, but I will be using that multiple times in this show.
It's fine. We'll return to it. We'll workshop it, and we'll return to it over and over again, and make sure that joke lands every single time.
"We have our heading."
And you, the listener,
she just runs out.
Yeah, she just she's kind of done for the evening, I guess.
Done for the evening. All right, that's us at the end of the episode. Konrad, do you want to break it down in the actually the perfectly named the breakdown?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, IMDb rating 8.3 for New Colossus. So okay. one point higher than last week's according to IMDb. You said you would sort of fall around the mid 7s possibly for the first episode. What are you thinking this time?
I think this was better end to end as an episode. I think it lacked the kind of thrilling finale. It did have a good finale or a good final act. It didn't have quite the high point that last week's did, where it's like, okay, wow, we're doing all of.
We're off to the races, yeah.
Yeah, this episode has completely changed what it is for the final 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think end to end, it was a better episode. I'd probably still say it's in the high 7s for me rather than in the 8s. I think it's still trying to find its feet. I'm still waiting for there to be a really like kind of confirmed plot that sinks its teeth into me. But I'm liking the characterization. I'm liking the performances of Prairie and French. We had blessedly little Steve in this episode, which is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. And it's great to see Jason Isaacs returning to the screen. I say returning to the screen like he was ever off. Like, it's great to see Jason Isaacs in what looks like it's going to be a pretty significant role in this.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, right, all right. So, was there any theories coming out?
So there was one that I forgot to mention that didn't really come up for whatever reason, and that is, so this is new listeners to the show will know that I love a fire from the hip theory sometimes. Just something
old listeners to the show.
Well, sorry, old listeners will know that. New listeners won't know that.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna fire one off here.
Okay.
Not really based on anything, but my suspicion is that at some point, Prairie will get her eyesight back through an NDE. I think that's got to happen. There's going to be some NDE she's gonna suffer where she meets presumably the Arabic-speaking lady again, and she's like, "Right, you're leaving soon. You're leaving captivity soon. So here's your eyesight back."
Okay, awesome. Good prediction. And just run us through the other. Like, you mentioned a couple as we were going, but just tell us what they are so we can all get our ducks in a row.
Oh Jesus! Okay, I have to out myself as not knowing what I'm talking about. Okay, so there were 2 for Jason Isaac in this one. So, and I don't like doing this typically. I don't like making theories that I think are going to come true in the episode where I make
That's fine.
them.
You've done a couple. It's completely understandable.
But so the first one was that, like, I think Jason Isaac's character has very questionable ethics and will abuse the OA in the pursuit of answers for his questions. And this is kind of the same one, but I put it down anyway. We might end up amalgamating these. Hap is 100% a bad guy. I put that fairly early on. Yeah, so the OA is still displaying some of the recklessness which got her into this situation in the first place, i.e., as she's telling the story. So I think Hap is potentially still looking for her in the present day. We'll find her again, and it'll be up to her crew of misfits to save her. And I think that's going to be that's kind of the fact that she's kind of bringing all these misfits together makes me think they're going to have to be important, and they're not important at the moment because it's just Prairie telling her story. So something's got to happen in the present, and I think that's going to be maybe the driving focus of this season. Is something happens to Prairie or the OA, and the gang need to go and help.
Awesome. Okay, great theories. Right, guys, remember, put your theories in the comments if you're a Konrad, and we'll read them. There are a load of great theories this week. I will be, in the future, including some of your theories into the podcast as well. We're so early on now that they're all shooting from the hip.
Nice.
But also, there's some people who are hitting on main themes in the episode already, but aren't honing it down maybe on one particular very focused theory that I could say on the podcast. But if there's anything you would like maybe to mention on the podcast, if you just put on the comments saying, hey, maybe you could talk about this one and give me a focused theory that we could discuss, I'll definitely do that. Right, okay, let's get into the questions for Konrad then.
Yeah, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
As you know, guys, if you comment underneath the pinned comment at the top of this video on YouTube, you can actually ask a question to Konrad or myself. Either way, we're so early in the show at this point, it's probably mostly to Konrad, which is fair enough. And we have a few for you, Konrad. So first question comes from Archmaester Rennie, long-time listener of the podcast. And
Yeah.
Archmaester says, who wounded the OA's back, resulting in her scars?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it could be done, like, it can't be self-inflicted. It doesn't look like, but it does look like it was all kind of done at once, which makes me think, I reckon maybe, okay, I'm just going to throw, this is difficult for me to theorize about because it could literally be anything at this point. I'm just going to throw a wild theory out there and see where it lands. I think when she escapes, it's going to be an all-action escape, and the glass that she's trapped in is going to break, and she's going to end up maybe like rolling around on it naked, and that, you know, will cause her to lacerate her back and give her the scars.
Okay, so broken glass. Maybe we'll focus that in. Maybe and say broken glass causes the scars.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, because we know where you've been on your theory matrix before when you have these big long sentence like theories.
Yeah, but that cuts both ways though, because if I have like really long theories and they end up being completely wrong, I have to buy myself an orange with.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. If we just say it's from broken glass, it's going to be red or green.
Yeah, like there's no way for me to get out of that.
All right. Well, I'll let you decide how long-winded you want to be on that then.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take away your out. Okay, so next question is from Shelley, and this actually question is good because it's going to refocus a conversation we were having about half an hour ago, and it'll make us look like fools for not realizing this. What did Konrad make of the comment from the scholarship people to French? Your abuela would be very proud. Just the asking of this question from Shelley has made me realize the error of our ways half an hour ago. Because now, do you want me to tell you what I think of it now?
Yeah, go on.
So,
he lied?
No. I think that the matriarch of the family, the mother figure for him was his grandmother. She's now passed away. The coach knows that the mother isn't very involved, so therefore he's saying your abuela, your grandmother would be very proud.
Yeah, I mean that was one. Maybe I didn't like vocalize that earlier, but that was kind of one of my reads of that, was that, well, this woman that he goes back.
I thought you okay, yeah, got you.
So, well, I was kind of in two minds. I was like, I don't think this is his abuela because she looks too young to be his grandmother. So where is she? And yeah, I was expecting her to either turn up but be very old and infirm, I guess, or to potentially be dead. But I think that totally makes sense as well, and it actually makes French's characterization much sadder, because if he's only recently kind of inherited these responsibilities, then, you know, how the hell is he going to get out of this in one piece?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, MH, just finished watching the episode. I would have definitely gone into Hap's trap and ignored the most obvious red flag, that being the name Hap rhyming with trap. My most burning question would be if Hap is an actually renowned scientist, or if he once was but had fallen under the radar because he couldn't prove any of his theories about NDEs.
Oh, he's 100% like a Herbert West Reanimator situation, where he's like, he was a brilliant young scientist at one point, but his ideas were too out there, and he was kicked out of medical school, or kicked out, had his money for his research taken away, and now he's become a villain. That's a tale as old as time for mad scientists, and Hap is clearly one of those.
Yeah, well, there you go. Actually, and MH says, okay, that's more of a theory than a question, but yeah, I think that's probably not something we're maybe not going to get any answers on, but at the same time, I think that's a believable characterization of that character.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's one more question which I need to find, because this person didn't put it underneath my tagged comment. So it is, it's a bit annoying, but sometimes sometimes I do remember. Okay, it's interesting you mentioned shoes in the house at the end there. I've always been curious if anyone else does this, so I'll make the question for the next episode. I've always taken my shoes off in the house, but my grandfather, he would always wear his shoes from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed. But when he went out, he would put rubber covering on his shoes. Anyone else who did this? Or Anthony and Konrad, do you know anything like this? So basically what they're saying is, Blau Punk C99 this is. Basically they're saying their grandfather would have worn shoes around the house, and then whenever going out of the house, they would put an extra rubbery pair of shoes. Like
shoes for your shoes, essentially.
Yeah. So double shoes.
I think what your granddad wanted to invest, and I don't want to say this disrespectfully, but what your granddad wanted to invest in there is a pair of slippers. Yeah. Because that's literally what slippers are for, is to cover your feet so you don't have to get your feet all up in everyone's business while you're walking around the house. But then you don't have to wear shoes in the house.
Yeah, okay, so definitely slippers. I think we've solved that one for you.
Yeah, I feel like someone should have sat him down and been like, "You'll never believe this. I've only heard about it myself, but they've invented something exactly for this. You're gonna love it."
I can imagine the grandfather just running in one day and goes, I've realized what I could do. Think of like a sock, but like a really thick sock.
Yeah, with a firm sock.
A sole of a shoe on the bottom. We're thinking slippers here.
We'll make millions.
Make billions, yeah. So, pair of slippers. Didn't do anyone any harm. Right, well, there we go. That is episode 2 of the OA, New Colossus. I'm very happy to be into this show now. We're sort of getting into the meat of it. The first episode, I think we'll all agree, is a bit slow-moving. They are sort of settled, and at the same time, it's very slow-moving, but they're also going through things too quickly at some stages. And I think they're finding their feet now. Prairie is, in her story, in the basement, so it's only going to get more intriguing from here. Konrad, what are you hoping to see next week?
I think I want to see a bit more of the present, because this was pretty much all flashback. So I'm hoping we get a bit more forward momentum in the present day narrative, but I do hope it balances it with Prairie's story, because that is where the really interesting stuff is at the moment. So a nice balance of what we've seen thus far would be lovely.
That would be lovely. All right, guys, could you please subscribe on The Culture Cave on YouTube if you haven't already? Could you please subscribe on audio apps if that's how you prefer to listen to your podcasts? Like the video would be really, really great. If you want to send us an email, you can send it to adpodmail@gmail.com. Also, you could comment on the video, ask us a question for next week, all that sort of fun stuff. But apart from that, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.